This week on the show, I'm sitting down with Mark Robinson MP, member of the LNP opposition in the Queensland Parliament. Mark has a PhD from the University of Queensland, a Masters of Arts in International Studies, and a Bachelor of Science majoring in Marine Biology and Zoology from the James Cook University. One of the topics we'll be frequently covering in this show is the various interpretations of what the separation of church and state means. Mark Robinson offers an excellent perspective on this because he's not only an elected member of the Parliament over 3 times, but he's also an ordained pastor. This is widely known in the media and his electorate. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, David. It's great to be on your program.
What kind of negative feedback have you received from the public and even maybe colleagues about the intermingling of your political life and your religious life?
Can I say, when I get the opportunity to meet people and talk with them and talk them through that, it's mostly positive.
Good.
Most people understand, they have an understanding that if you're bringing something from a Christian compassion, a love of people, helping disabled mums that come with disabled kids to my office and supporting and helping them, and out of that Christian ethos of helping people who are disadvantaged and doing all you can for those who are poor and needy. I think if people understand it from that perspective, they want more of that. They think our parliaments and our members of parliament and our government should be doing far more in that space. I mean, it's difficult when it comes to budgets, and that's not an easy process for treasurers to get right. But people are very positive when you move past the ideological kind of exclusive secularism at times that's out there, not inclusive secularism. When it's exclusive, people do have issues, and we have had people, I had one person say to me they thought it was wrong that as a pastor, why was I leaving the ministry to go into such a terrible kind of sphere where all that goes on in parliaments.
A Christian said this to you?
Yeah, a Christian said that. And I said to him, look, I don't feel like I've left being a leader or a Christian leader, and my denomination doesn't see it that way. But I felt it was very much a distinct calling into that area, a sense of destiny to enter into politics as a member of parliament. So I have had a range of feedback. It's mostly positive. And I think when people have got to meet me and I've had the chance to, more than the 6-second grab a gotcha moment of some media out to do, to run a particular line, when you've had the chance to elaborate and talk about your faith and your values and how people are so important to get things right for, people say, we need more of that. And when you talk about it from an integrity perspective, that you have a bottom line, you won't lie, even if it'll never be found out. It's between you and God, you won't lie, you won't tell a mistruth, you won't misrepresent the facts. Most people, even if they understand that your religion and your faith is what brings you to that view and that value, they'll say, well, that's a great outcome, we want that.
Yes.
We might not understand the religious side, but we really want more people that are trustworthy, because the reputation of politicians has really gone down the tubes fast. Early on, as an MP, I had spoken at a church or preached at a church, and a journalist picked up that story somehow and decided that he wanted to run a big piece in the Sunday Mail, Queensland's biggest newspaper, Agenda, the centre spread, phoned me to say, look, the storyline is that Christians are having too much influence in the parliament, it's terrible, this is a bad thing. And I tried to say, well, look, I think you're seeing it from a very narrow perspective.
Yes.
I went away from that in discussion with him before the paper came out, thinking, wow, this is really, he's going to beat me up, it's going to be, it's going to be not a good thing out there. And I just had this quiet sense from the life of Joseph in the Bible that man meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, and to not worry about it. Well, they ran their story. They ran the story about how terrible it was, and that interplay of church and state, and this was bad, and people like Mark Robinson, Christians in the Parliament, were skewing parties and skewing things in the wrong direction. Well, it's interesting because that next week my office had phone calls and emails, and I'd have to say it was in the 90 percentile plus range positive.
Awesome.
Saying we really think it's important to have people with integrity in the Parliament.
Great.
Some even said, look, Mark, I don't go with your religion, but I'm glad you're in there because we can't trust that lot, want to keep the beggars honest, that kind of thing. And so I was concerned about that. I worried a little bit over it, what it might be. Is this at the end of my career? Will people turn away from me because of my values and faith? I actually found the average Australian felt the trustworthiness was really important. To have perceived people of integrity, and it actually didn't hurt me at all.
I don't think you live in, and I don't think you represent an extraordinarily right-wing electorate. But I think something that the mainstream media narrative commonly dismisses is that overall disposition of Australians, is that we do value that integrity, and we do value that Judeo-Christian ethic that Australia was founded on, whether or not it results in a personal faith.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the Judeo-Christian fabric of our society goes deeper than some politicians think. That general sense of what's right and wrong, doing the right thing, by somebody else, doing the right thing by yourself and your family. Those things are deeply entrenched cultural values in our society. And I think this is where Brexit and Trump and other expressions in Australia are gaining from, because I think this very extreme social leftedness that is now trying to force itself as normative is upsetting a lot of average people. They're saying, look, I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm not happy at all about this.
It's a great segue into a question I've got in a little bit, is what lessons can the major parties, and why not even include the media in that, what lessons can these major voices in our society learn from those things that are now becoming apparent, Brexit and Hanson and Trump, these new popularities of things that I'd say, let's just make it the major parties and the mainstream media have somewhat marginalised in recent history?
I think at a local level as an MP, to me, if every MP in this country is not saying, I got to check whether I'm listening, because the polling's told me this, the research told me this, and you know what? It was all wrong.
That's right.
So if you are not listening with your ears on the ground and representing your people, they will walk away from you.
Right.
And I think this is the risk not just the major parties have, every party has, is if you are not listening to your constituents, and then in that engagement with them, you are not picking up on their ideas. And if you are not representing them in the parliament, I would say to you, watch out. You may have a very short career as a member of parliament. Now the major parties, we have to be very, very careful to listen to that voice, the very quiet, disengaged voice of the average Australian who's not politically engaged, doesn't want a soapbox, but definitely wants to be heard.